Godzilla vs Biollante. I really wasn't kidding when I said this would be random reviews. First a monkey movie and now a monster movie? But it's actually not that random for me because I love Godzilla, more than almost anything, and I could talk forever about the Big G in all of his films. In fact, random reviews almost started as just a straight up Godzilla review series. Remember, I'm a 90s kid, and one major part of being a 90s kid that I totally forgot to mention in the Dunstan review is that you are required by law to love dinosaurs. And don't worry, the movie had that covered too. So naturally, I was obsessed with those terrible lizards. I read all the dinosaur books, I watched all the dinosaur shows, and of course, I watched all the dinosaur movies. I'll never forget the magical evening when I first watched Jurassic Park on VHS with my family, and it blew my little 7-year-old mind. I didn't think life could get any more rad. Until one day, when I was watching TV, I came across something that immediately caught my attention. What is this? What is this? What is this? It was Godzilla, and I was powerless against him. How could I not love him? He was just like a bigger, more awesome dinosaur. He was spawned from nuclear radiation. He would wreck cities. He fought other big, awesome giant monsters. And he just ruled so hard, I couldn't get enough. Godzilla rules. Which was kind of a problem though, because being a Godzilla fan wasn't as easy as being a dinosaur fan. He wasn't nearly as mainstream back then as he is now. Dinosaur media was everywhere, but you had to dig deeper to find the Godzilla stuff. I would check all my local video stores, which usually only had the same couple movies. One time I found one at a Kmart, and the next time a marathon happened on TV, I was able to see some different ones, and even record a few onto a tape so I could watch them over and over again. This tape, actually, this was one of my most prized possessions as a kid, because I was somehow able to record almost 3 full Godzilla movies on it. I don't even know how that's possible. Like, why did Titanic need to be split up onto 2 tapes? I know it's a long film and all, but this thing has almost 3 movies on it, with commercials too. Wow. Anyway, times were tough, and I was constantly on the lookout for new Godzilla movies that I hadn't seen yet. Little did I know that new movies were still being made and released, in Japan, which I would have no way of seeing until many years later. But I say all that to get to this point. As of last year,
I believe that search is over.
With the help of the internet, streaming, and more easily available DVDs and Blu-rays, I was able to catch up on all the previously unavailable films, except for one. And yeah, of course it's Godzilla vs Biollante, the one that this video is about. For various reasons, this one is just never on streaming, and hard to get for a decent price online, so it seemed to always be just out of my reach. But last year, I was able to obtain this pretty legit looking DVD, and finally watch the last of the classic era Godzilla movies that I had not seen.
Very exciting time.
And wow, what a banger to go out on. For a Godzilla fan, this was an absolute treat, and I don't know, I just felt like I needed to talk about it, so here we go. Before we get into it, maybe a little context on the film itself would help. I mean, this is the 17th Godzilla film overall, and the second in the second series of films known as the Heisei era. Don't worry, if you're just here for the review and you don't know anything about this stuff, it won't really matter when we talk about the movie, but just bear with me for a second. This is a direct sequel to The Return of Godzilla, which was basically a reboot that started a new continuity, so you don't have to have seen all the other ones to know what's going on. And like a Rocky movie, this even starts with a quick recap of the previous film's climax, which leads us right into this film's beginning. And yeah, this movie gets right into it because there is so much that it's going to throw at you. Keep in mind, the series was over 30 years old at this point, and had already featured plenty of outlandish ideas, including countless giant monsters of all shapes and sizes, elements of mysticism, science fiction, space travel, numerous alien invaders, each with their own monsters, island adventures, the son of Godzilla, Jet Jaguar, Mechagodzilla, cyborgs, and even whatever this is. So the fact that they were able to come up with so many new concepts for this one is really impressive. This movie is crazy, so why don't we just dive right in? Oh yeah, and this one is distributed by Miramax, so I guess Godzilla wasn't the biggest monster involved in this movie. The first thing we see are computer monitor readouts showing us the 4 Godzilla alert levels, which will come into play in the movie. I love shots like this showing old computer displays. I don't know, I just think it looks cool and it reminds me of Terminator and Alien. And then boom, we get the title card, and that recap that I mentioned of the previous film plays out as the opening title sequence. The first thing we see is these soldiers who recover some Godzilla cells, I guess, and don't forget about those, they're going to be a huge plot point going forward. But then they are ambushed, and the cells are stolen by these guys, but then just when they think they've escaped, they are ambushed by this guy, who is one of the best characters in the film. He's supposed to be this ultra awesome secret agent man, but he kind of comes off more so as a little goofy and awkward.
Kiss you guys.
His name is SSS9, and he works for the fictional Middle Eastern country of Saradia. Yeah, sure. Saradia? Also, just a side note, this movie is rated PG for quote-unquote traditional Godzilla violence, which is just such a weird way to put it, but also kind of odd because this one actually has a lot more non-Godzilla violence in it than most, with multiple shootouts, fistfights, and car wrecks. Oh well. We then cut to Saradia, where we are introduced to Dr. Shiragami and his daughter Erika. And get used to this happening, this movie is overstuffed with characters and we're constantly being introduced to new ones. So I'll do my best to keep track of them all for you. The doctor is working for the Saradian government on using the Godzilla cells to develop new plants that can thrive in their desert or whatever.
This weed can grow in the desert.
Good. Then the America will certainly be mortified. Their position as the largest cereal exporter in the world will be shaky.
But they are cut off by a terrorist attack on the lab, and unfortunately, Erika is killed in the explosion. We catch back up with Dr. Shiragami, who's now sworn off Godzilla cells and seems to only work with roses. And we get to meet Mickey, the real best character in the movie, in my opinion, who is a student with psychic ESP abilities from a school for gifted young people. Yeah, so now they've got people with psychic powers in these movies. This seems to be a little divisive amongst the Godzilla fans, but I mean, at this point, why not? I think it fits into the world of the movie both tonally and plot-wise, and leads to no less than two of the most awesome Godzilla movie moments in the whole series. And Mickey would become the longest-running character in the franchise, appearing in every Heisei-era film going forward. I love her, and I think she makes a strong series debut here. She's been called upon by Shiragami to attempt to communicate with a rose plant of his for some reason. We'll find out more about that later, don't worry. But it appears to be unsuccessful. We also see that they're being spied on by the Americans.
She's not a bad sight.
And our boy, SSS9. Right before leaving the lab, though, Mickey hears a voice cry out, hinting at things to come. And this is Asuka. She's the president of the psychic school, and she's also involved in a romantic subplot with this government scientist guy, who at least at first seems to be way more into her than she is into him. Also, this restaurant that they rebuilt around a footprint from Godzilla's previous rampage is just such a cool little detail. This movie's full of stuff like that. Meanwhile, volcanic activity starts up at the mountain that Godzilla fell in. Wonder what that could mean. And then, guys, here it is. This is one of those all-time great Godzilla scenes that I was talking about. Mickey is explaining to Asuka that last night, all the little psychic children had terrible dreams, so she asked them to all draw what they saw in them. And, I don't know, just check this out. I love that. It's just all Godzilla, and then his theme kicks in, and you just know it's only a matter of time until he'll be back. Awesome scene. And you know what time it is? Time to introduce yet another main character. This time it's Gondo, head of the Godzilla research group. He's probably the coolest dude in the whole movie. Like, he's super capable and hardcore, but he's just so laid back and chill at the same time. He's recruited by the military to help them with the possible return of the big guy. And they also recruit Mickey to fly around the area, and sure enough, she senses that Godzilla is alive and awake.
わったもんだな。なあおい、
もう一つあります。
なんだ。
生物兵器というものが。
The plan here is to develop an anti-nuclear bacteria that could in theory defeat Godzilla if he does return.
核物質を食べる。
確かに核をエネルギーとしているゴジラにとっては絶好の兵器だな。
They go to Dr. Shiragami for help because they would need to test the bacteria on Godzilla cells, and I guess he's just the best Godzilla cell scientist or whatever. He initially refuses to help at all, but then there's an earthquake due to the nearby volcanic activity, and it's revealed that he had somehow preserved Erica, his daughter, by combining her cells with those of a rose plant? Okay. He's kind of becoming a bit of a mad scientist, and now that he's in peril of losing her again, he agrees to help, mainly so he can have access to the Godzilla cells and use their unique properties to save her.
エリカが死んでしまう。
まるでゴジラが現れた方がいいみたいね。
冗談じゃない。そのためにゴジラ以上の怪物を作ってしまうんだ。
They begin to work on the project, and Shiragami is called out by the other scientist guy, and his response kills me.
君にはまだ科学というものが分かっていないようだな。
Like, what? You put your daughter's soul in a rose bush and mixed it with Godzilla cells. Do you know anything about science? Anyway, tension is starting to build. And we are then shown the latest advancement in Godzilla fighting technology, the Super X2, which is the updated version of the Super X1 from the previous movie. They've made several improvements this time around, including a new design, a diamond-coated heat shield that can reflect Godzilla's atomic breath,
従来の1万倍の耐性と反射力を持った鏡で、ゴジラの熱線があれを直撃すると1万倍になって反射します。本当だよ。本当です。水陸両用。
That night, there's trouble brewing at Shiragami's lab, and there's yet another shootout between Biomajor, which is the American terrorist organization, and SSS-9, but it's broken up by some giant mutated vine, which is the first glimpse we get of our titular monster Biollante. They can't kill SSS-9, though.
ひょっとすると大変なことになるかもしれない。
Biomajor holds the government ransom by demanding that the anti-nuclear bacteria be handed over to them, or else they'll blow up the mountain that Godzilla is in, setting him free, which is bad. Meanwhile, Biollante has relocated to the lake and has grown into a gigantic mutant rose monster. I love these effect shots, it's totally awesome. They attempt to make an exchange with Biomajor, but SSS-9 shows up, and he's so cold. He straight up snipes this dude, and because the truck flips, they can't quite deactivate the bomb in time, which is really bad because not only did SSS-9 grab the bacteria, but boom, Godzilla is back, baby.
Godzilla は出るわ。甲殻バクテリアは持っていかれるわ。
And then we get one of the most random cutaways ever. We get a clip of some show where this rock and roll devil guy is like saying some wild stuff, but then he's interrupted with news of Godzilla's reemergence. I just love all the weird little details in this movie. The big guy is on his way to Tokyo, and the movie's really starting to heat up. A cool sea battle breaks out as they deploy the Super X2. And I have to say, its theme sounded very similar to John Williams' Superman theme to me. Suspicious. After the Doctor is nearly attacked, Mickey starts to think that Erica's spirit may have left Biollante because she no longer seems to recognize them. You do not want to kiss from that rose. And also senses that Godzilla must be able to feel Biollante too, and is being drawn to her. Back at sea, Super X2 puts up a good fight, but Godzilla's atomic breath proves to be too much and it melts the fire shield. even though earlier they specifically said that that couldn't happen. So, it's out of the game for now, and Godzilla makes landfall and starts heading towards the lake, ready to rumble. It's time for our first monster battle of the movie. Is this that super beast battle of the century that the box advertises? Maybe. And Godzilla is so pissed off in this one. He's all like, I took a 5-year nap in a volcano and woke up to this kind of nonsense? No way. Biollante has some tricks up her sleeve. But Godzilla just blasts her away. She tries one last defensive maneuver, but it's just no match for Godzilla, who tears through it and tortures her. But there's hints that she might not be gone for good. With the Big G back on the move, the military tracks him with the help of Mickey. They calculate that his destination is probably the Nagoya nuclear power plant, and plan to head him off there with all their military might. But Gordo isn't so sure and wonders if they might be making a big mistake by putting all their eggs in one basket. And it turns out he's right, because Godzilla shows up off the shore of Osaka instead, and it's too late to scramble the military there. But then Mickey shows up, and single-handedly faces down Godzilla. How come no one told me this movie was so awesome? This is the other one of those scenes that I was talking about that immediately became one of my all-time favorites. I'm not even sure what exactly is going on here, but Mickey uses her ESP to link up with Godzilla and influence him enough to halt his advance and causes him to turn back. I don't know, this was like one of the craziest things I've ever seen in a Godzilla movie. Mickey, MVP moment. Meanwhile, Gondo kind of fights his way into an office and steals back the anti-nuclear bacteria from the Seradians. So Seradia instead just orders SSS-9 to take out Dr. Shiragami, so at least Japan won't be able to make any more of the anti-nuclear bacteria. And this dude has the most casual reaction to realizing he's in imminent danger. He's just so cool, it's just a minor inconvenience for him. So the plan now is to use the Super X2 and Gordo's team to draw Godzilla back into the city and hit him with the anti-nuclear bacteria. This part is full of great miniature work and cool shots. And while, once again, Super X gets dropped pretty easily, it does its job, and Gordo is able to shoot Godzilla up with the bacteria. Unfortunately, though, he sticks around just a little too long to get another shot in, and ends up paying the ultimate price for it. He goes out like a champ, though, even delivering an action one-liner. His sacrifice seems to be in vain at first, but then the scientists realize that they need to raise Godzilla's body temperature for the bacteria to take effect. So they come up with another wacky plan to lure him to an artificial lightning field. Good thing they just had one of those nearby. Around this time, Mickey wakes up and foreshadows that other help might be on the way too. The lightning is working and the big guy starts to slow down, but they're still in danger of him getting out and reaching the nuclear power plant to recharge. But, just in time, Biollante busts back into the movie, looking way more gnarly in her second form. She once again gets an early advantage over Godzilla, wrapping him up, and even piercing his hand with her vines. Ugh. But he's got some tricks of his own and pulls out a new move, appearing to charge up his atomic breath, but then just holds it in and releases an energy pulse that frees him. Biollante sprays him with some sparkly slime stuff, and then tries to bite his head off. This wasn't the last time an opposing monster would try this on Godzilla, but it never seems to work out well for them. He just point-blank blasts Biollante in the face, pretty much killing her. Although, it looks like the fight and the anti-nuclear bacteria have finally taken their toll on Godzilla, and he goes down too. This is one of the weirdest shots, but I guess Erica's spirit is finally free. In the aftermath of the battle, Dr. Shiragami seems to have learned the errors of his ways. But then he just gets blicked by SS9. Other scientist guy chases him down, and just when it looks like he'll get shot too, this happens. That has to be one of the funniest villain deaths in any movie. Godzilla wakes up because the water has cooled him down a little bit, but he's had enough fun for a while and heads back out to sea. Our favorite couple finally gets together. I didn't add that freeze frame, that's just how it is. And the movie ends on an odd final line that is somehow kind of thought-provoking.
いつから私たちはこんな時代に生きるようになったのでしょう。神に向かって一歩歩み出した日からそれは始まったのかもしれません。思い出してください。もう一度。
I don't know. This was a weird one for sure, even for a Godzilla movie, but that's honestly why I love it so much. Like I said at the beginning, this was the last of the classic era Godzilla movies that I saw, and wow, it quickly became one of my absolute favorites. I will admit that it's structured a bit oddly, like the plot just kind of keeps going and going and going. New problems continually pop up and then just get solved, and then we move on to the next thing. And this might not always work for a normal movie, but Godzilla movies have their own rules, so yeah, I might have been a little confused the first time I saw it, but this movie's just constantly throwing new crazy exciting things at you, and I can't fault it for that. And sure, it might have way too many main characters, but they were all likable and had their moments to shine. The standouts to me were SSS9, Gordo, and of course Mickey. It's cool that they brought her back for the sequels, but I think a lot of her best moments happen in this film. Biollante herself is also pretty awesome. I appreciate that they were able to come up with a fresh new idea for a monster. I mean, we already had all kinds of other different ones, but this one's pretty unique amongst the Godzilla roster. This movie features some of the most impressive effects work of the Heisei era. This thing is so huge and intricate, and it's really cool how they were able to bring it to life on screen. Visually, the movie is pretty strong throughout. This was the heyday of practical effects movies, and they seem to use all the old tricks here. There's a nice variety of shots and sequences as well. And even though it's just a crazy science fiction movie with like pseudoscience and all kinds of wild stuff in it, it still kind of tries to make a point about like man's control over nature and how we shouldn't try to do too much.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
And loss and letting go, there's themes here, you know, and maybe they're not the most well-defined and it's not, you know, a work of art or whatever, but I think it does enough to keep you entertained and engaged. All the characters have their own proper motivations, and yeah, I don't know. I just can't say enough good things about this movie. It's the exact kind of Godzilla movie that I love. But will you love it? Maybe. If you're a Godzilla fan like me, but this film has eluded you, I'd say definitely check it out. It's packed full of fun ideas and concepts, and has a lot of great Godzilla moments in it. If you're not a Godzilla fan, then I could see this one being a lot for someone going in cold, but I could also see someone liking it if they are just into weird science fiction or monster action movies. So yeah, that's it for now. Stay tuned for another random review coming soon, and may Godzilla be with you.